Hello, this is Don Milne. I'm taking a few minutes to make this video with the title Memorial Day Headlines, getting you on the front page and the evening news. Most of you have probably seen this video where I show an example of how people can use a smartphone app to read the stories of World War II fallen at their grave sites. This is a modern remembrance experience unlike anything that's been available before. And it only is going to improve as we get more and more of these stories written. We need to have more people writing these stories, not the current number of people writing these stories. So I wanted to make this video to explain how we can get more people to help out. Remember, the goal of Stories Behind the Stars is to give each star a story 421,000 times. That's a lot of stories. And if we had 421,000 people helping out, we could do that in 3 hours or so. But we don't have that many people, so we're going to need more to help us write these stories. Progress to date with Arlington National Cemetery, we started off with what we thought would be 7,700 names, and then over the course of the past year, we've recognized that there were probably another 1,000 World War II fallen that are in Arlington. So that's kind of the total we're looking at now. We still have a couple thousand to go. What we hope to do by Memorial Day of this year is to complete state by state as many stories of the World War II fallen buried at Arlington as possible. Will we get 100% of all the states? Maybe not. That is an aggressive goal with just a few weeks away, but I think there'll be a number of states that we will be able to do 100%. On a state-by-state level, you can see now we have volunteer directors in 39 states, which is another great way to get a focus on completing all 421,000 names, because we do have to identify all of the names in some sort of a database in order to write a story about each and every one of them. And having it done on the state level is the way that makes the most sense. We have remaining to do 394,000 names, so we need 394,000 stories. If you do the math, if we had about 3,000 people, if they were to write one story each week, over the next 30 months, they could complete those remaining names. And the reason it's 30 months is we're looking for September of 2025, which is the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Wouldn't it be great if we had enough volunteers to finish all of the stories by that point? We have found over the last 3 years that media is the key channel to getting more volunteers. We have a page on our blog where we keep track of all of the stories that have been written in the media about Stories Behind the Stars. For instance, this title here, Kansas Volunteers Needed for a World War II Storytelling Project. We had a few dozen people in Kansas step forward to help us on the project. Here's a follow-up story we got in the Washington Post that garnered a bunch of attention. And for Oklahoma, here was a story from Oklahoma that got us attention for people that are in that state. This one is in Wisconsin. Again, it's focusing on a soldier who lost their life at Pearl Harbor, but it mentions the Stories Behind the Stars project. And here's one in Pennsylvania that gives a local angle about people who died at Pearl Harbor. And those are written around the Pearl Harbor anniversary. We had some coverage during last Veterans Day. This one here in the Santa Fe, New Mexican, we were able to get a story about our New Mexico state director, and it was able to attract some more attention. All these stories, here's one from USA Today, are able to get in the front of audiences that we otherwise would not be able to get our message in front of. I'm going to have a link to this that you can see, so you can see the kind of headlines that have been written. And the invitation is that someone in your position can do something very similar and attract attention to get additional headlines. Not just in newspapers, but here's one on Colorado 2, Fox 31 that did a story. We even got BBC News to do a story for us. And here's a letter that one of our volunteers wrote to American Legion magazine that got us some attention. And here's an individual that got on the nightly news that's one of our volunteers, and another one here in Florida that got on the news. So we'd really like for you to take the position of many of our volunteers and get some headlines that'll help us with our project. You are the key to more media coverage, and we have a wonderful opportunity coming up because every news organization, no matter what size, does a Memorial Day story. So every editor in each of these news organization is talking to their reporters and saying, I need a story for Memorial Day. Go get me something. And Stories Behind the Stars is a unique historic project with an easy local connection, and that's you. So we'd like you to be able to approach local media and get your story about what you're doing with Stories Behind the Stars in front of them, and it'll attract more volunteers. Here are a few ideas that could attract media attention. A story that would say, local man remembers every local World War II fallen. We have a number of our volunteers that have been focusing on, say, a memorial that's in their city, or a list that's from their county, or maybe it's from the school they attend. Different ways that you can focus on that. Wouldn't it be nice if there's a headline that says, every Idaho World War II fallen buried at Arlington National Cemetery has a story? That would be a great headline to run in Idaho, and it's something that could be possible if we had someone contact local media about that. You could highlight a local hero memorial. Maybe you've written a story about someone that just that story is so unique that you could focus on that and let the media know about that. You maybe have been in contact with family members of those individuals, and that's also a great angle that you could bring them in on the project. And if you have perhaps some living World War II veterans that you know of, see if you can focus on a story of someone that they knew that didn't make it home from the war. That would be another wonderful angle that I think would attract many, many reporters. They'd love to pick that up as a news story. As far as how to contact the media, I recommend doing a Google News search for past Memorial Day stories and contact that reporter. So I'm going to take a minute here, and we're just going to do a quick example. I haven't done this before this recording, so we'll see how it goes. I'm just going to pick a city and a state, and we're going to see if we can identify using Google News search someone that you could contact about this Memorial Day story, because they've written about Memorial Day in the past. Here we are on the Google page, so we're going to do a search for news, and we're going to do a search for Memorial Day. And maybe I'm looking for something in Dallas, Texas. This would search for Memorial Day stories in Dallas, Texas that were in the news. So D Magazine has 6 ways to celebrate Memorial Day. The Dallas Observer did a story. Paper City Magazine did a story. Consumer Impact did a story. The Dallas Morning News Memorial Day weekend event honors the fallen and marks unofficial start of summer. That one might be a really good one to contact that writer, because he obviously is interested in writing about those who honor the fallen. And Fort Worth Star Telegram ran something. Here's something from Culture Map Dallas. So you can keep going through different pages for Dallas for Memorial Day, and you can find many different organizations that have done stories about Memorial Day, and you can contact them and pitch your idea about running a story. In the document that I sent to you, you'll see that there's some Stories Behind the Stars talking points that would be helpful to share with the reporter to give you some big picture items, but you should be able to pitch a local high interest angle. I got this idea actually from one of our volunteers who he's done one story a week for 52 weeks. And so that's a really great way to approach the media and say, hey, in the last year, once a week, I've written a story about someone who died during World War II and didn't come home, and he can share some information about what he found during that journey. And it can inspire others to follow an example like this. But it can be for many, many different reasons, and you can use that list of different stories you've done in the past to get some ideas that you can try in your local area with the media. We want you to remember that although I'm asking you to be on the front page or for you to be on the evening news, I hope you recognize I'm not trying to make you into the local celebrity about this. And I'm sure even if you're modest, you recognize that by stepping forward and maybe being outside of your comfort zone and taking the time to bring attention to what you've done in participating with this project, it's going to allow us to get many, many additional volunteers just like you who can take some time each week to remember the fallen, so we can complete this project in time for the few remaining World War II generation to see that every one of their World War II fallen comrades will be remembered for decades to come. One last thing to share in closing. This project got started back in 2020 when I was living in Utah. And our idea was, let's do a pilot project and see if we can complete the stories from one state. If we can do that, then we kind of proved that this is possible and we can roll it out in additional states. On July 4th of 2020, KSL, which is the largest media organization in the state of Utah, did a story about this project. And over the next 3 to 4 weeks, I probably got 200-300 emails from people that were curious about this project. Not all of the people that emailed me back ended up helping, but we ended up with more than 100 people to help out. And over the course of about the next 6 months, we were able to do the 2,100 stories of the World War II fallen from Utah. So we know that the media can draw people to volunteer to help with a project like this. It took us about a year, a little bit more than a year, to get those first 2,000 stories. And right now, our pace is about 2,000 stories every 5 weeks. So that's only going to grow. I'd like to get it up to about 10,000 stories every month. If we get there, we're for sure going to be able to be done with our project by our target date of September 2025. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating and helping with this project. And I'm looking forward to seeing your news stories coming up around Memorial Day. And from that effort, seeing many more people volunteering.